like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, let's dive right in to the Peach Bowl. That college football playoff quarterfinal where the Texas Longhorns, well, they took on the Arizona State Sun Devils. We've got a ton of highlights lined up, analyses, even some pregame buzz about, those Arizona State kickers, right? This one went to double overtime, so, get ready.
Yeah, and it's easy to get caught up in all the back and forth of a game like this, but got to remember the winner is going to the Cotton Bowl. They're keeping their national championship hopes alive. So much pressure.
Definitely. And you could feel it right from kickoff. Arizona State, they had a pretty rough first drive, tons of penalties, but they still managed to put points on the board, right? Got that field goal. I was really curious to see how their kicking situation would actually play out.
Especially with all the question marks surrounding that position coming into this game. But, got to give them credit. That field goal early on, it seemed to calm their nerves a little bit.
Yeah, maybe for a minute. Texas came storming right back with 2 massive touchdown passes. That's the Quinn Ewers we all know and love, right? Especially in those first few drives.
Oh, absolutely. That 54-yarder to Matthew Golden, it was a perfect display of Ewers' arm strength and accuracy, right?
Yeah.
And then that touchdown to DeAndre Moore Jr. Just a beautifully executed wheel route. And, for those who might not know, wheel route, it's basically where the receiver, they start running toward the sideline, and then they curve upfield, trying to get behind the defense. Really tough play to defend, and Ewers, he just put it right on the money.
Texas's offense, they looked unstoppable at that point, but for me, the real turning point, it had to be Silas Bolden's 75-yard punt return for a touchdown. It was more than just a score. It was a complete momentum shift,
Yeah, no doubt that play, it totally ignited the Longhorns. But let's give credit where it's due, okay? Texas defense, they were outstanding. They were stifling, even with those early penalties. They shut down Cam Scatebo on that crucial 4th down attempt, maybe a sign of things to come.
Yeah, and speaking of Scatebo, he usually dominates, right? But he had a surprisingly quiet first half. Felt like the Texas defense they had his number, even moments where he looked, just exhausted, maybe even a little sick.
Yeah, that's a sharp observation.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't the performance we've all come to expect from Scatebo. Makes you wonder how much his physical state actually affected Arizona State's overall game plan, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, even with a comfy lead at halftime, it felt like Texas's offense had kind of cooled down after that initial explosion. And Arizona State, well, they were still hanging around. I had this feeling they weren't going away quietly.
You could just sense it, right? The Sun Devils, they were just waiting for that spark, something to ignite their comeback. And in the second half, well, they got it. Thanks in large part to how should I put it? A rejuvenated Cam Scatebo. Down 24-8 in the fourth quarter, Scatebo, he almost single-handedly orchestrated this incredible rally. He scored a touchdown, threw a 42-yard touchdown pass to Malik McClain, and even converted that crucial 2-point conversion.
That trick play touchdown. When Scatebo threw that dime to McClain, it was such a gutsy call by Arizona State coach Kenny Dillingham, right? Completely changed the complexion of the entire game. Talk about a momentum swing.
Yeah, Dillingham deserves all the credit for that call. Caught Texas completely off guard. And from that point on, it really felt like the Sun Devils, they were riding this wave of energy and belief.
And then we get to the end of regulation. Bert Auburn, Texas's kicker, he had 2 chances to win the game, right? With field goals. Missed both. One of those misses, with no time left on the clock, it clanged right off the upright. I can't even imagine the heartbreak for Texas fans and that adrenaline rush for Arizona State. Overtime.
Those missed field goals, man, they were dramatic. But you have to acknowledge the pressure that Arizona State's defense, they were putting on Auburn. They did such a good job of disrupting his rhythm and forcing those errors,
Those missed field goals, they were just agonizing for Texas, right? But they also kind of highlight a bigger point, I think. Special teams, man, they can make or break a game, especially in the playoffs. But what's really interesting to me is that, despite those misses, Texas, they didn't just collapse, mentally. They still pulled out a win in overtime.
Yeah, no doubt. It really speaks to their resilience,
Yeah.
right? And let's not forget about Quinn Ewers. The poise he showed in those overtime moments under all that pressure delivered 2 clutch touchdown passes. One to Matthew Golden on 4th down in the first overtime, and then another one to Gunnar Helm in double overtime.
Those were some seriously gutsy throws, especially that one to Golden on fourth down. He really stepped up when the game was on the line. But honestly, what impressed me most was that Texas defense, they held strong the entire game, especially against a player like Skanubat. I mean, the guy's tough to contain.
Absolutely. They were relentless. Skatebo, yeah, he had an amazing surge in the second half. But for most of the game, they had him bottled up, limited his running lanes, forced Arizona State to get a little creative with their play calling.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of Skatebo, even though Arizona State lost, you got to admire his performance. He was clearly not at 100%. And he still almost single-handedly carried his team to victory. What do you think was going through his mind in that second half?
Honestly, probably a mix of, determination and just pure frustration. He's a competitor, right? He's not going to let a little something like, whatever was ailing him, he's not going to let it stop him from fighting for his team. And his performance, it raises a really interesting question. What if he had been fully healthy? Could Arizona State have actually completed that comeback?
Man, that's the kind of what if that'll keep fans debating for years. But regardless of the outcome, Skatebo's performance, it was one for the ages. Plays on the ground, through the air, he even threw a touchdown pass. Do you think this game, even though Arizona State lost, could it actually help his draft stock?
It definitely showcased his versatility, right? And that never give up attitude. He might not be the ideal size for, your traditional NFL running back, but his toughness, his vision, his receiving abilities, he's a very interesting prospect.
Yeah, definitely a player I'd love to see get a shot at the next level. Okay, so before we move on to, the implications of this game for Texas and the rest of the college football playoff, I got to ask about those Arizona State kickers. They used 3 different kickers throughout the game. Was that part of the game plan, or were they just, scrambling?
Their kicking situation has been a bit of a roller coaster all season, right? They've really struggled to find consistency at that position, and it definitely played a part in their decision-making throughout the game. Remember that opening drive, they opted for a field goal on 4th and short, which is, it's pretty unusual. I think they were just trying to avoid putting too much pressure on any one kicker.
It's crazy to think that something as seemingly straightforward as kicking can have such a huge impact on the game. But I guess that's the beauty of college football, right? The unexpected is always lurking around the corner.
Oh, absolutely. Every single play, every decision, it can have a ripple effect. And that's what makes analyzing these games so fascinating.
For sure. So let's shift gears a bit, talk big picture. Texas won, yeah, but they showed some cracks, especially on special teams. And now they're going up against the winner of the Rose Bowl. And it's going to be a battle between, get this, the number 1 Oregon Ducks and the number 8 Oregon Ducks, 2 teams from the same state in a playoff game. That's a pretty unique situation, right?
It definitely shows just how strong football is in Oregon. But for Texas, it's a tough challenge, no matter which Oregon team wins.
So what do you think? What are the big differences between the 2 Oregon teams? And which one poses a bigger threat to Texas?
Well, number 1 Oregon, they're known for their offensive firepower.
Right.
They've got a dynamic quarterback insert name of Oregon's quarterback, and just a ton of weapons at the skill positions. Their offense can be explosive. They can put a lot of pressure on opposing defenses.
Yeah, and Texas's secondary has been a bit of a weak spot at times this season. Could be a real problem against number 1 Oregon's passing attack.
Exactly. On the flip side, number 8 Oregon, they're a defensive powerhouse, one of the best defenses in the country, led by insert names of key defensive players for 8 Oregon. They can make life miserable for quarterbacks. They can shut down even the most potent offenses.
Yeah. So it's a classic offense versus defense matchup in the Rose Bowl. And for Texas, it's a pick your poison situation in the Cotton Bowl. Either face an offensive juggernaut that could exploit their secondary, or a defensive wall that could just completely stifle their offense.
It makes you wonder how Texas will prepare for the Cotton Bowl, right? Do they focus on shoring up that secondary, knowing that number 1 Oregon could just light them up? Or do they game plan for a defensive slugfest, thinking that number 8 Oregon will try to grind them down?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating strategic dilemma and a good reminder that, coaching and preparation, they can be just as important as talent and execution in these big playoff games.
No doubt. That's where the mental side of the game really comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Texas, they survived a real scare against Arizona State. How will that affect their confidence, their focus moving forward? Will they carry that momentum into the Cotton Bowl? Or will they be haunted by, that near collapse?
Man, that's a great question. They showed a ton of resilience against Arizona State, but they also revealed some vulnerabilities. It'd be really interesting to see how they respond to the pressure, that intensity of the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, the mental game, it's often overlooked. But at this level of competition, it's crucial. The teams that can stay composed, focused, hungry, those are the teams that usually succeed in the playoffs.
So, final thoughts on the Peach Bowl, and what does it mean for Texas moving forward?
I think the Peach Bowl, it was a great reminder of why we love college football. It had everything, drama, incredible individual performances, and that wild finish, right? It kept us all on the edge of our seats. For Texas, it was a hard-fought win. It showed their strengths, but also their weaknesses. The big question now is, can they learn from this? Can they make the necessary adjustments? Can they take their game to that next level for the Cotton Bowl?
Well said. And for all of you listening out there, what stood out to you about this game? What are you curious about as the college football playoff keeps rolling? We'd love to hear your thoughts. But for now, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the Peach Bowl. Okay, so we've been breaking down the Texas Longhorns win over those Arizona State Sun Devils in the Peach Bowl, right? Double overtime thriller, it had everything. But the story, well, it doesn't end there. Texas is moving on to the Cotton Bowl. They're going to face the winner of the Rose Bowl. And get this, it's the #1 Oregon Ducks versus, wait for it, the #8 Oregon Ducks. Two teams from the same state going head-to-head in a college football playoff game? That's wild.
Yeah, no doubt. Really shows you the strength of those Oregon football programs. But for Texas, it's a unique challenge for sure. Do they prep for that high-powered offense of #1 Oregon or that incredible defense of #8 Oregon? It's a tough choice.
Before we get into that, though, we've got some great listener questions about the Peach Bowl and, what's coming next. So first up, we have Sarah from Austin, Texas. She asks, with starting right tackle Cameron Williams out injured, how worried should Texas fans be about their offensive line going up against either one of those Oregon teams?
That's a great question, Sarah. It really highlights a potential weakness for Texas. The offensive line, it's crucial, right, for any team to succeed, especially when you've got a quarterback like Quinn Ewers who needs time to, make those plays. Remember those sacks he took in the third quarter against Arizona State when Kelvin Banks went down for a bit? That could be a sign of things to come if that line isn't holding up.
Yeah, and both Oregon teams, they have defenses that can really create chaos. #1, Oregon might have that flashy offense, but don't underestimate #8, Oregon's defense, right? They can disrupt plays, they can force turnover.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Texas needs to figure out that right tackle position. They got to make sure Ewers is protected. If not, it could be a long day against either Oregon team.
Okay, next question. This one's from John in Tempe, Arizona. He asks, what's next for Cam Scatebo after that heroic performance? Is he heading to the NFL? John, you're not the only one wondering about Scatebo's future, right? He was incredible in that Peach Bowl, showed his toughness, versatility, and just, an amazing will to win.
It's hard not to be impressed by Scatebo, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He might not be your typical NFL running back, size-wise, but his vision, his ability to break tackles, and, he's a surprisingly good receiver. He's a really interesting prospect.
Definitely someone I'd love to see get a shot at the next level. All right, last question. This one comes from Maria in Eugene, Oregon. She asks, how do you think that all-Oregon Rose Bowl is going to play out? Who do you think Texas would rather face in the Cotton Bowl? Maria, that Rose Bowl matchup, it's going to be a good one. You've got #1 Oregon, with quarterback insert name of Oregon's quarterback, and that high-scoring offense.
Right. And then you have #8, Oregon, known for their defense, their ability to just control the pace of the game. It's a clash of styles, that's for sure. Hard to say who's going to come out on top.
If I had to pick, I'd probably go with #1 Oregon, just because of that firepower. But I wouldn't count out #8 Oregon either. As for who Texas would rather face.
Man, that's a tough one. It's like, do you want to get bitten by a viper, that fast, venomous offense, or slowly constricted by a python, that suffocating defense?
Yeah, pick your poison, right? If Texas's offensive line isn't at their best, either one of those Oregon teams could give them some serious trouble. I think the real key for Texas is going to be that mental toughness. They bounce back in the Peach Bowl, but can they keep that focus, that determination against an even tougher opponent in the Cotton Bowl?
Yeah, and that brings us back to that mental aspect of the game, right? This Texas team, they've shown moments of brilliance, but they've also had those, vulnerable moments. Can they pull it all together for a championship run? That's the big question, isn't it? Talent alone, it's not enough at this level. You need discipline, focus. You got to believe in yourself and your teammates. We've seen Texas do it. But can they do it consistently when it matters most?
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We covered a lot, the Peach Bowl, those future matchups for Texas, lots of challenges ahead.
It's been great breaking down this game with you, looking at the bigger picture of the college football playoff. Gonna be a wild finish, that's for sure.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be back soon with more analysis and insights as we get closer to the end of the college football playoff. Until then, keep those debates going, keep those predictions coming, and as always, stay curious.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have the ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.